My name is Darren Villano, and this is an inside look of what it's really like to start and run a business. This is where I share insights and ideas, practical tips and strategies that I've learned both from running my own company as well as from working with other small business owners and entrepreneurs. I'll take you behind the scenes of my business and other businesses too, because I believe that as entrepreneurs, what we can learn from each other is limitless. So come on and join me now as we go inside my business. Now, if you're thinking about what business you should start for yourself, you might be thinking, what am I really great at? What can I do? What business should I start? Maybe you have a business idea right now and you're trying to figure that out, or maybe you don't even have a business idea. You just know that you want to be an entrepreneur at some point, but you're thinking about where are your talents? Where do they lie? And what really should you be doing? Well, if so, I want to share some advice with you right here, right now. I want to talk about how to figure out what you're really great at. And what I want you to do is think about this. I want you to not do the following. I don't want you to rely just on what your friends and your family tell you about what you're great at. I don't want you to rely just on that alone. And the reason why is because now if you have people close to you that love you and that will give you advice and feedback, that's great. That's awesome. And you should definitely talk to them. I'm not saying don't talk to them, but be very careful about what you do with that information. And here's why. Because the people that love you, they want the best for you. They love you. They're going to be with you probably the rest of your life. They don't want to tell you what you don't want to hear. They don't want to tell you that you really stink in something, or maybe you should be doing something else, or maybe you should really try this business idea, or maybe you should try that instead. They don't want to feel the repercussions if they're wrong, or if you fall on your face, if you try. They love you. And it's hard for people when they love somebody else to be able to give that kind of information. Also, when people are close to you, they often err on the side of low risk, giving you low risk solutions. So if they didn't know you at all and they saw that you had some raw talent and you were great in something, they might say, go for it, because they don't have an emotional attachment. They're just giving you some feedback. But when they love you, they're afraid to tell you to do something that's going to be risky. If they see that, maybe at some point you're going to quit your job, or you're going to downsize and sell your house, or you're going to take out a loan, or you're going to invest money or raise capital, they are afraid to tell you to do that because they don't want to see you make a mistake. They don't want to see you fail. And so they will tend to give you the low risk, option. They'll say, why don't you do this? This seems to be a little bit safer. This is what most people will do. And the other thing too is if you just rely on auditing yourself and getting feedback from 2 or 3 people that are closest to you, that's a small sample size. 2, 3, 4 people is not enough to really tell you the full picture. So here's what I'd like you to do instead. Instead, I would like you to rely on the market. I want you to have the marketplace tell you what you're good at and what you're not, and give you feedback. And I love the market. When I talk about the market, I'm talking about the public. I'm talking about your potential customers. What I love about it is the marketplace is unemotional. The marketplace doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't care who you are. If you have a product or service that you want to offer that is great and will solve a problem for somebody, or fulfill a need or desire that someone has, or a solution, they will buy it. As long as you do a good job delivering the product, communicating the product. There's different pieces to this, obviously. But if you do all of those things well, you'll be in business. You'll get that feedback. And conversely, if whatever you're doing is not working, you're going to get that feedback too. If your product or service isn't good enough, if it's, if you're not marketing in a way where you're really telling people what you do, you're not storytelling in the right way, if you're not pricing your product right, there's a whole host of things that you can get feedback on as well there, that things aren't working. And what I love about the market is it's much bigger sample size. You're going to be touching tens, hundreds, maybe thousands of people, depending on what business you're in and whatever size test or whatever you perform. You're going to be reaching a much bigger audience, and that feedback is going to be more valuable because you're going to be able to get that feedback and really know what you're good at and what you're not. And the other thing is when you're going through this, you're going to get a chance to figure out whether you love to do it and whether you're really good at it. Because when you're actually bringing whatever it is that you want to do to the market, you're getting a chance to get some experience, to do it, to get your hands dirty. And you're going to figure out whether it's going to work for you too. Because before you go all in on a business, you want to make sure that it's something that you really want to do and that's going to work. And when you do that, you get experience. And I love experience because experience is life's best teacher. There is a lot of ways that we learn, and most ways that we learn are passive, but nothing is going to teach you like experience. And at some point, if you're going to do something, if you're going to try something, start a business, at some point you got to start logging in the hours. You got to start plugging away and building up the experience. And there's no better way to do that than to test your idea. So let's talk for a second about that. If you're, depending on where you're at in life, if you're in college, maybe you're working for somebody full time right now and you have a business idea, you have limited time. You're going to need to find the time when you're not in school, when you're not at the office or at the job site for your company, sometime when you have your own time to test your idea. But there are many ways to do it. You can volunteer. If there's something that you really want to do, you may know somebody or you can find somebody that already has a business that's similar that maybe you can volunteer your time. Ask them, hey, look, can I work in your business for free? So that there's something in it for them. And you go and you try it. Make sure that you like it. Make sure you want to do the work first. You can test whatever idea you have on a small scale, or you can start a project on the side, something that you can do to test your idea. And by the way, if you're trying to figure out what you're great at and you have a couple ideas, you should be trying lots of things. If you're not sure, test. And the younger you are, the more you should be experimenting, the more you should be testing, the more you should be trying, the more you should be doing different things to try to really figure out that combination of what's going to work for you and what idea you should really pursue. And remember, whatever business that you start with, is probably not going to be what you do forever anyway. But it puts you in the game and you realize that, oh, there's this other opportunity out here that I could be pursuing. And then you start to shift to that, and just being in the game puts you in a position to see something else that could become your longer term business idea. Now, if you're still trying to figure out what you're great at, what you want to do, you're not alone. Many people, probably most people, are in this situation. I was in this situation. My talent, what I'm really great at, what I love to do was staring at me in the face for many years before I even realized it. I grew up in a small town and with a single mom. My mom owned a small business, but we were poor. We didn't have anything, and we struggled every day to make ends meet. And I remember my mom literally being on the phone with bill collectors every day. I mean, this was in the days before cell phones, and this was in the days before even caller ID. When the phone rang, if you can remember these days, when the phone rang, you pretty much answered like every phone call because you didn't know if it was a family member, of somebody, there was an emergency or something was going on. And of course, a lot of the times it would be a telemarketer or it would be a bill collector. And we got a lot of bill collector phone calls. And when I was like 13 years old, I saw my mom going through this, getting these calls from bill collectors every day. And we lived under constant threat that we were going to lose our house, because my mother was just struggling to pay. She couldn't keep up with the bills. She'd pay one and the other one get 3 months behind. And we just couldn't keep up. And she literally had to make decisions sometimes on paying a bill or putting food on the table. So it was really tough to see this, and it was heartbreaking for me. And when I was 13 years old, I had this idea. I went down to the local office supply store in my town. It was a real small town, and this store doesn't even exist today, but we did have a small little office supply store at the time. And I went there and I bought one of those accordion folders, the big pocket folders with all the envelope pockets in them. And I bought one of those, and I went home and I went into the cupboard where she stuffed all of her bills. She got so frustrated with it, she would take her bills and just shove them up in this cupboard. I mean, there was unopened envelopes, like month after month after month of unopened envelopes. That's how bad it was. You would open this cupboard and it would literally fall out. And I went home one day and I was just so tired of seeing this, and I just wanted to help her. And I took everything out of there, opened up all the envelopes, organized everything in this accordion folder. I labeled every slot: electric bill, telephone, mortgage, insurance, car payment, etc. And then I took business envelopes, like 11, the regular business size envelopes, and I labeled those as well. And I put one of those in each pocket. And my idea was, at the end of the workday, she could take money from the money that she made in her business and literally put it in the envelope. She mainly made cash back then in the 1980s. That's the way most people paid her. And she would take the cash and just shove it into her purse. Wasn't even sure how much she had. And my thought was, she could come upstairs, take that out, put it on the table, put a little bit of money into each envelope. And at the end of the month, when the bill came due, the money would be there. And I even had the audacity to put an envelope for vacation. We'd taken, I think, one road trip up until this point. We never went on vacation. We never talked about vacation. But my thought was, hey, if we could just put a couple dollars in there, every day. I wanted to go to Disney World back then. That's what I wanted to do. And my thought was, if we could just put a couple dollars in there, then by the end of the year, we would have enough money to go on a trip. And I look back at this many years later. I didn't even think about this. I actually even kind of forgot about this because it happened so long ago. And I was thinking about this. I'm like, what 13-year-old does this? What 13-year-old does what I didn't, this is before the internet. I didn't even know where I came up with these ideas because no one taught me. There was no internet. All we had was a library. There was no bookstore in my town. We had one mall that was, 20 minutes away. To me, it was practical common sense. It popped in my head. This is what I need to do to help her out. I realized many years later that this was part of my story. This was my talent. This is what I was great at. I believe that we're all talented. We're all great at something. We all have the ability to be great at something. We just need to figure out what it is. And a lot of times it could take a lot of years to figure that out. Some people, if you're lucky enough to figure it out early, good for you. That's awesome. If you can figure out what you're great at and you can run with it and you can build a business around it or whatever it is you're doing in life, that's great. But most of us kind of stumble around trying to figure it out. It's not always obvious. And when I was a teenager, and when I looked back, I started thinking about this. When I was a teenager, up until about 19 years old, when I dropped out of college the first time, all I wanted to do was be a small business owner. That's all I was surrounded with. My mother had a small business. My uncle had a small business. I knew some other people with businesses. No one in my family went to college. No one. I didn't have that example. And so I just saw business owners. And it's what I want to do. And it happened to be what I loved. I just talked about it all the time. It was what I wanted to do. And when I was a teenager, I would come up with little ideas of ways to make money and little business ideas. But then when I got close to graduating high school, I started to get advice from the adults around me that what I really needed to do was go to college because none of them went to college. And they said, hey, look, you could always start a business later. Go to college first, get your education. And that seemed like great advice to me. It made sense, and it's what I did. But I didn't realize later that, I was poor, I didn't have any money, so I needed to take out a lot of college student loans. And what happened was, once you take those loans and you owe tens of thousands of dollars, and you're getting ready to graduate college, you're thinking about getting a job with somebody else. That's all you're thinking about because you have to make that payment. So that became the obsession, was to work for somebody else. And then once I went on that conventional track of going to college, going to grad school, working for somebody else, excelling in my career, it became hard to be able to jump from that to entrepreneurship. But I'd always kept my hand in entrepreneurship. For 17 years, I had been working and helping other entrepreneurs with their businesses on an informal basis. It wasn't for pay. Most of the times I did it for nothing. It was because I knew the person, I was friends with them, I liked them, or somebody introduced me to somebody. It seemed like a cool project. And so it wasn't until a few years ago that I saw this pattern. Wait a minute. Look what I did when I was 13 years old. Look what I did when I was a teenager, hustling and putting little things together to make money. Look at the way I thought when I was a teenager, what I really wanted to do. And isn't it interesting that for 17 years while I worked in the corporate world, I never stopped paying attention and working with small businesses. And I saw everything through an entrepreneurial lens. Even when I worked in big companies, I would constantly be thinking, oh, how would I apply this to a business if I own it? Or what advice did I learn that I could maybe share with my mother with her business, or with a friend that's starting a business? I was always doing that. And then it hit me that I could do this for a living. Why don't I take everything that I've learned, all my experience, not just with small businesses, but with my education, with even the conventional stuff that I did, business school and working for big corporations. There's something there. I have all those pieces that I could put together and offer to a client and work with a small business owner, which is what I love to do because I love working with small business owners and entrepreneurs and helping them with their businesses. I can do this. I can have my own coaching and consulting company. And then it really hit me. So I would encourage you, if you're sitting there thinking about what you could do for a living and what kind of business could you start or where your talents really are at, I would tell you to take a step back at some point and look at your life. Look at the pattern that is happening. Do you find yourself in a certain situation doing a certain thing over and over again? Is there a pattern there? Is there a story woven through all of that is telling you something? Sometimes it could take years for you to realize the full picture of what's happening. And you can take that information and try lots of different things. And if you're young, like I said, if you're young and you don't have that, if that hasn't evolved for you yet, what are you interested in now? What are you passionate about now? What is that telling you about yourself? What can you experiment and try now that is in line with that? Take all that information and go with it. Go with it. And I believe that over time, you will discover what you are truly great at.